indicator that Wesley wants something unbalanced. If he wanted, something more tame, he would play the Grunfeld structure. He would play d5, which is a totally legitimate line against Hikaru's system.
Well, you ask and you shall receive. And what's he hesitating for here? Like knight c7?
Knight c7 is beyond standard. Like the knight never goes anywhere but c7. Let's put it that way.
Right. Is there another move that he's going to maybe rook b8 first for some reason? I don't really think so.
No, not knight. Of course not knight d7 because that allows knight c7. That's the whole point of putting the rook on e8 is to keep these pieces here until white goes f3. Then the knight has a new pathway through h5 potentially to f4. Robert Fischer, by the way, demonstrated a lot of salient ideas here in his 1972 match against Spassky. And you were right. There is another move.
They played a match? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was not very famous, so I'm not surprised you haven't heard of it.
So it was
in some faraway country.
I feel like we're just transposing exactly into what we'd expect with knight c7 first. I just wonder what the subtleties are, and this is what we do, right, Danya? As grandmasters ourselves, we're like, wait, this move order seems curious to me. Why would they do that? But I guess it goes to the same territory no matter what.
But the fact that he's investing his time tells us that clearly Wesley there's something that either is bothering him. I was going to bring up bishop d7, but this move looked awkward to me. I had briefly forgotten that knight c4 is still impossible. The pawn on e4 still hangs.
Right.
Hikaru is one step away from being able to play knight c4, but if he plays bishop f1, then Wesley plays b5 just in time. Maybe Hikaru could play a4 there, and then things get very tactical.
Oh, that gets sharp. And if white plays a4 now to stop b5, maybe that knight ends up on b4 rather than c7.
Maybe that's why he didn't put the knight on c7 immediately. I think we've answered the riddle.
Okay. Well, riddle me this, riddle me that. I think the b4 square is what it's about. So I think that Wesley, he's done, pretty much everything normal. He's spending his time, but they're about even on the clock. And for Hikaru, is he going to play this f3 move to make sure that e4 is defended? But as you were highlighting, Danya, knight h5, those type of ideas can be difficult to meet because black tries to take over the dark squares.
And they could result in checkmate very, very quickly once the bishop lands on d4. The king is shoehorned to h1, queen h4 comes out. That's really scary, not Hikaru style. He plays bishop f1. I think he is orienting himself toward the b5, a4 idea, trying to carve out the light squares on the queen side. For example, b5, a4, and if black plays b4, white doesn't take on a6, but rather ensconces the knight on b5. This looks really unpleasant for black. This cannot be what Wesley is aiming for.
No, this is terrible. And then you give the c4 square away as well. Ooh. That's not what you want. If you're going to play like this, you really have to play knight c7 and just sort of keep some of the tension alive, take over the b file. You don't want to close down the b file when your rook's on b8.
No. Knight c7 is definitely his idea. But Wesley can also delay the move b5. He can still play knight c7. But then that begs the question, why did you put the bishop on d7 so quickly? And that allows white the chance to play a4.
And knight c4.
Even knight c4.
Right. So this is what happens in these top level games where these are two of the absolute best players on the planet. And the reason why they're thinking here is because knight c7 is obvious 2 moves ago, but now it gives white that additional option of knight to c4, which means that maybe black would have to spend another tempo, which might be a wasted turn, and white gets to strike with bishop f4 and so on. So Wesley needs to be careful right now. I think that b5 made sense, but he instead chooses knight c7. I guess he's not afraid of knight c4. Yeah,
that's the big question. What is he intending?
Because b5, if you take on d6, is bishop g4.
Oh my Lance, that's gorgeous. Let me show this. Knight c4, b5 looks ridiculous. You're giving up the pawn. Whoop! Bishop g4, hitting the queen, exposing the attack on the knight. Now the game is not over. White can play f3, but for instance, queen d6, fg b4 looks atrocious for white. The entire center collapses.
Yeah, you don't want to hand the squares over like that.
No. This is out of the question. And if knight takes d6 doesn't work, then that begs the question, does white want to play knight c4 at all? Probably the answer is no. You don't want to go knight c4 and then, back to d2. So I guess that leaves a4. Is there, and he plays it.
No, this makes perfect sense. And after a6, nothing has changed, where knight c4 is still going to be met by b5 thanks to this bishop g4 tactic.
The open a file changes nothing. I think Hikaru is he aiming for a5? Or is he going for a queen sack?
What? Is there a queen sack there?
Well, knight takes e8 and knight takes f6.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's a big center. I think, knowing Hikaru, I think that's what he's aiming for. He's going to open the A file, and then he's going to go for the queen sack.
Yeah, the queen sack does look much better with the rook on A1 actually having life in the position.
Bingo.
So this is clever.
But he's double checking, trying to figure out who the open A file favors. One would imagine it's white because white controls it. But these are big decisions from which there is no going back.
Right, and it's not entirely out of the question, even though at first glance I wouldn't love it. If A B5, black can technically play knight takes B5 as well. That's an idea that does happen in certain Benoni positions, just trying to trade off some pieces. E4 becomes a target.
Well, if Wesley's afraid of the queen sack, then he'll definitely play knight takes b5. There's no chance that Hikaru is considering anything other than taking on d6, because if you go knight a5, black plays b4, you drop the e4 pawn, you can eliminate that from your consideration.
Right. So it's just about, is a takes b5 going to be played? Knight takes d6. And Hikaru, he's really investing time here. He's down almost a minute at this point. So you said earlier, Danya, that Wesley, he's playing for a fight from the very first moves of this game, and he has himself a fight. Will we see knight takes d6?
I think we will. I think Hikaru has, I mean, there's the sunk cost situation where Hikaru has invested so much time.
Whoa!
No, it's not a queen sack, it's a knight sack.
Holy, oh my gosh.
Folks, knight takes f7. What a move.
Love it. And I love the fact that he
approves of it. Look at his center.
Yeah, it's massive pawn center. And the open A file means a timely rook A7 could be devastating for black.
It absolutely could. The bishop coming out to f4, the zombies coming out of their graves with the pawn advancing to d6. I think Wesley probably only considered the queen sack. This has clearly caught him off guard. Now, he does have queen d7 here. But then I suppose white plays f3.
Right, and then white's not losing a piece.
Although queen takes f7 and b4, that gets really messy. Maybe this is better than taking the knight.
I guess after king f7, f3, bishop d7, it's not clear there either how white should proceed, because the 7th rank is closed for now. I like the pawn center for sure.
Maybe e5.
Okay.
Maybe rook a7. It's always hard to decide when you push the pawns and when you accumulate.
Right.
Apparently that's bad.
Maybe there's knight takes d5 somehow, and the e5 pawn drops as well, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it. Bishop takes e5, and black gets a lot of activity. Anyways, Wesley decides to accept the Trojan horse. And where will he put the bishop? Bishop d7 does seem like the most natural move, just putting as much meat as possible in the center.
Yeah, although I would be nervous about this e5 move because you're inviting forks everywhere. So it's not an easy call, because the bishop can also run all the way back to c8.
But then d6.
And then knight e... Oh, you can take b5.
I absolutely will. And then I'll try to drop my bishop back to c4. And at that point, white already has, what, 3 pawns for the piece.
Yeah, that doesn't.
So what are you suffering for if you're black?
Okay, so bishop d7... My first instinct seems to be better. At least it doesn't drop another pawn. And all right, but bishop d7, white has a number of options there. It's not like you have to play e5, obviously. You can play d6 and then e5, for example, and just push all your pawns forward.
Hikaru is such a magician, tactician, and apart from that, he's also made Wesley uncomfortable. You can see it in his body language. You can see it in his time usage. He's gotten Wesley into a position that Wesley did not sign up for, with a weak king, with a monstrous center, and with a 90-second and counting time disadvantage.
Yeah. Oh, Wesley, he loves these positional battles where he can slowly improve his position. Like, that's really his bread and butter. He's also an amazing tactician. He grew up as a player who just left and right was sacrificing pieces and winning important games. And he went very far in the World Cup when he was a teenager. But he played b4, so he's trying to solve his problems tactically.
Accompanied with a draw offer.
Really?
Which is, I can bet that Hikaru is not going to take that. He's not going to play knight takes f7 and then be like, yeah, okay, I'll take the draw. It's like that joke about, you know, the guy who swims 99% of the way to shore and that's, I'm tired, I think I'm going to go back to the island. You know, I don't think he's going back to the island. I think he's playing knight a4.
So my first reaction was shock. My next reaction, now that I've thought about it a little more, is, you know how I feel about the draw offer, right? Like, there's no universe where this game should end right now. It is super unclear, and they should prove it over the board. So the draw offer is allowed. We get it, but
D6.
Yeah, my gosh.
D6.
Wait, so if
what a way to reject a draw offer.
If BC3 is there rook A7?
Oh, look at this line. CB, is there DC? Queen takes C1 and
queen with check.
Oh, and now you're just winning everything. No, this has got to be completely with bishop C4. Queen takes, even just the calm queen B7 should win, attacking the bishop.
Wow, what a sequence. That's actually unbelievable.
Richness of the tactical complexity, and black down to 3.5 minutes. Wesley doesn't have the time to navigate the complexities of this position.
And I wonder if Hikaru thought the draw was a joke. You know, like, there's no universe I'm taking it up. What does black do, by the way? BC3 rook A7 looks borderline devastating. So how does black even stay in the game there?
Well, first question, what if he moved the knight? Knight E6. Okay, I know that's a crazy move, but...
Knight.
Try this on for size. White can just play knight B5 and trap the bishop. Bishop H5, G4. Hey, I'm only down a piece for 2 pawns.
Right, so we might as well win that piece back, and now you have extra material and the safer king. So that looks
completely winning for white. Bishop is coming to C4, rook to A7, knight to C7. Ooh.
No, you can't play like this. You can't play like this. I think you have to take on C3, and he does. But after rook A7, what does he have here?
Some move, some crazy knight takes C4 like move.
Oh, because you queen D4 check or something like that. Is that what...
Or bishop D4 check, trying to intercept the connection between white's queen and black's pawn.
Oh my gosh, we just show that. Knight takes C4, pawn C7, bishop D4 check, I think is...
No, I think here there's bishop E3.
And after bishop E3, you just take back.
And we should never forget that if queen takes C1, white takes with promotion.
Oh my gosh, with check.
Incredible. But I think queen D4 check might defend.
So bishop E3 now?
And then you just move the rook calmly.
Oh, that is so lovely. That's actually nuts.
If you take, I take with knight F2 on tap.
And then
it's equal. It's just equal.
And that was my next question.
Endgame.
And how is this equal? Like, it's the most complicated endgame ever.
I have no idea. No, this
wow.
But Wesley doesn't do any of that. He moves his king back to F8.
And so after D takes C7, we'll see a... Wait. Does Hikaru actually have to take the queen back? I guess he does, yeah, because it's queen D4 check stuff. So DC, queen D1, rook D1, and white's winning the piece back?
I suppose so, although there's also in the mix the move C takes B2, which must be properly cataloged. But then the rook hangs, and then the bishop hangs. I need 3 Advil.
Yes.
And a large coffee, please. And I need somebody more capable than me to calculate these complications out. A dose of stockfish.
I mean, you could look at Wesley's face, right? He knows that he's in trouble, but he doesn't know it's, what does that say, I can't plus 4, right? That's hard to imagine exactly. What's the material count? It's still an extra piece for black, now just for 2 pawns.
No, black is up 2 pieces currently.
Oh, sorry, 2 extra pieces.
You're forgiven.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for 2 pawns. But it's likely when all said and done is going to be like an extra pawn for white and the pawn at C7 at that.
Watch Hikaru just play like BC.
No.
Just decide to keep the tension.
That would be awesome, but I don't think it's best.
I agree that it's not best, but I feel like if Hikaru isn't satisfied with his level of calculation, then he plays BC. Otherwise, you play DC.
And he's doing the right thing. We should add that Hikaru calculating here is correct because it's a very concrete line. What could happen after DC7 is with the queen trade, maybe white gets the piece back, but too much liquidation has occurred and black has good chances to hold. So if he thinks that keeping queens on and things like that will cause black more reasons to be nervous and fall apart. Oh, this line is just...
Yeah, no, keep talking. I'm not trying to distract you.
No, but
I just thought this was a salient line. By the way, this is all happening.
Whoa, so FG94, and look at the eval bar. So look at this. Wait. Oh, there's a missed chance here from...
But what a crazy move. Bishop basically just leaving the pawn on C3, and now Wesley getting active. Rook E1.
Oh my goodness, can Wesley win this game?
It's a 3-result game. The rook from E8 jumps into E1.
And then rook f3 check only move?
And Hikaru's hanging by a thread, but then white plays bishop d2, forking the rook and the knight.
What a game this has been.
Wesley's got to go rook e1, though. And he does.
That. So does it matter where the king goes? He goes to e7. Bishop d2. The good news is after bishop takes c2, bishop c3, you can't take that dark sword bishop on c3 with your rook because the f1 bishop, the rook is overloaded is the essential point on
There's
f3.
A back ranker. There's a back rank made. Now we will obviously show the missed win after the game, but right now we are sticking to the game continuation. Bishop g5 check or bishop d2. Those are the two candidate moves for Hikaru. Bishop h6 even is possible.
Okay, bishop d2 it is. I think he'll just take on c3, but the game isn't even over there, right? Just because we have opposite colored bishops, black has a pass pawn, and I think white's pass pawn is about to be eliminated.
But Hikaru has the idea of going king g2, and then bishop a6 will be a mortal danger to black's survival. So Wesley has to find a way to get to this pawn ASAP, and he does. And he does. He's going to eliminate it. This should be no risk for black.
None whatsoever.
Although material will be equal. I didn't realize that white is actually up a pawn here.
Yeah,
after all is said and done.
But it's almost like black's going to be up a pawn because white's pawns are doubled over there on the king side. So it's a very strange turn of events. Hikaru is going to be disappointed by what's just transpired, but Wesley's putting up tenacious defense.
I mean, to navigate your way in that position, to find something worthwhile with a minute on your clock, that's what makes Wesley such an absolute monster. The gumption, the verve to not have a meltdown and just make a blunder there. How do you do that?
And that's why the eval bar can be not misleading. It tells you the objective valuation, but the positions often are trickier than just +4, right? +4 in an endgame when you're up 3 pawns or whatever, that's obvious. But when you're in this type of position, we had to leave that pawn on c3, as you were indicating earlier. It just goes to show how deeply complex the game of chess is. So Hikaru, maybe he'll be, frustrated that he didn't win the game, but I think you often can forgive yourself as a chess player for not seeing every possibility.
And I wanted to echo a point that you've made before, which is that it's not about seeing the best move. Just seeing the evaluation already gives you a tremendous amount of information about the position. If you know that it's +4, you're thinking about the position differently than if you have no idea whether you're winning or losing. It demystifies the position to a large degree, and it completely changes your perception. And this should be a draw. I don't think that either side has any serious chances here. Wesley just has to deal with the threat of rook f7. That's an annoying threat.
And Wesley's also, on occasion, had some internet problems in the past, so he'll look to avoid that. In fact, against Hikaru, wasn't it in a bullet?
It was.
They had a match that they drew the rapid and the blitz, and then a bullet, he lagged out and lost.
It was, and I think Hikaru is still playing for a win, partially for that reason, and partially because the h7 pawn is a huge weakness, and bishop g8 is a very pesky threat. Oh, Wesley going to c3, beautiful.
It's very smart. Immediately rook c3 is a draw, so...
Just exquisite. Takes, and king f7 shuts down the bishop, forcing Hikaru to give away a pawn. And the piece should be signed shortly.
Very nicely done by Wesley. So this whole game, he was hanging on by a thread, but the thread held up, and that means he's going to go into game 2 with an even score, and he'll get the white pieces, which is a tough task for any player on the planet. Facing Wesley so with black, I wish you well.
And Hikaru is going to have to push out of his mind the fact that he had a win. He goes rook f7 check, though, still trying to generate chances.
I just can't tell if he's trying to win or lose.
No, he's trying to win. King g2, king f2.
Then rook h3, bishop g3 check. Oh, actually, that might be the blunder you're looking for.
But Wesley could start pushing his pawn.
Right.
Now it's an actual 3-result game.
Yeah. c4, c3.
But bishop takes h7, and Hikaru wants to simultaneously take the pawn and stop black's pawn. Rook h3 ends the game immediately.
Right.
Just rook h3 or rook g4.
h4.
Yeah, take the pawn, draw. Yep. Now, right after the game finishes, we will show a critical moment where Hikaru missed the win. But I think we can forgive him.
Yes, it's now a question of whether he can forgive himself. Because even if he doesn't he never had the evaluation, obviously, but after the game, even if he doesn't analyze right away, he must have had the sense that he had a win somewhere.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And Alexei Serrana yesterday, he suffered from that. He actually looked over the previous game against Hikaru. He saw that he had a win. He was devastated. And I'm positive that that impacted his mental condition for the next game. And we know how hard Hikaru is on himself. Everybody at that level is incredibly hard on themselves. They expect themselves to find every single winning option.
And these players like still trying, both of them here.
Oh, Bishop F4. Hikaru is playing with some fire here.
Right, like if you go King B1, Rook B2, King A1, you might get checkmated at some point.
Wesley needs to keep some time on his clock. Knowing his internet issues, he needs to keep himself with at least 7 seconds on the clock.
Right. And
okay. Take the rook. Or is Wesley going to go for it? No, he's not.
No, Wesley's just not that type of player.
No.
These two have had funny. They've had funny speeches championship games where they play like 150